Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar and event professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host, business coach, and founder of the Mobile Bar Academy, Sarah Murphy. In each episode, the Mobile Bev Pros team will bring you industry experts, information, anecdotes, and opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and successful business that supports you in creating wealth. I'm excited to share with you today's episode, so let's get started. Here on the podcast with me today is Karina Silvestre. She's the owner and operator of We Mixed Mobile Bar Company up in the Chicago area. And you're the first guest on the podcast series we're doing wherein we interview existing mobile bar companies that have achieved massive amounts of success in a fairly short amount of time. The idea for this podcast series came up when we realized that people need inspiration. They need to know it's possible. And for those that are just getting into the industry, the events industry can sometimes be really daunting because of the seasonality and because of the ramp, wherein sometimes takes time to build visibility and trust amongst those and that can get you booked. And so when asked what you wanted to talk about today for this series, you said that you wanted to talk about growth mindset, which I think is the perfect way to kick off the series.
Yeah. So I feel like for us, with how we started our mobile bar, it's an interesting story, actually. Every time I say it, I'm like, oh, that was really fast. But how we started it was we had worked at restaurants for a really long time. Me and Ryan, my husband, who's also the owner of We Mix. And we were working at restaurants when we were at college. I hated working at restaurants. I loved the sense where we were really good friends with like all of the servers, the bussers, the cooks. To this day, the people that I worked with at restaurants, I consider them like family. We might not be blood family, but we're family. And I learned a lot from them. So we're doing that on the side while we were in school. We were studying business and the health sciences. And so once we got out of college, it was really difficult to find a job because this was during COVID of 2020. It was super hard to find a job because everyone was applying, right? Everyone's applying right out of college. COVID started and then companies are going crazy. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? The office remote. It was a weird transition. Eventually we did find jobs. Luckily enough, I started working at a tech company and then my husband started working in accounting. And at this tech company, I was actually a coach for the users of the company. And my husband was in accounting. But while we were at our traditional successful 9 to 5 jobs after the restaurant, we were like, we actually miss like the craziness of restaurants. And I never thought I would say that. I was like, I don't know why I miss it. What is it exactly about it that I miss it? But we kept saying that to each other. We're like, we really miss restaurants. We really miss it. We miss the environment, how fast it is, how you have to come up with solution on the move. And so then right when we were working with our jobs, that idea kept coming up about the restaurants, but we didn't want to go back in anything. And so our aunt is an event designer. And so she started asking us like, hey, you guys have restaurant experience. Would you guys be like willing to help me like at events? And we're like, oh yeah, we can do that. We used to do events at the restaurant all the time for private parties. We started helping her out and she was getting really busy at the time. So we were helping her more consistently. So we were working our 9 to 5 job. And then on the weekends, we were helping her. Once we started doing that with my aunt, people would start asking us about our backgrounds because they really liked us. We were very personable. We like to talk to people. And so they'd start asking us like, oh, what do you guys do? Oh, what do you guys bartend for our events? You guys have experience in restaurants. So what about this? And they would just ask us. Then it wasn't until September of 2022. That's when I told Ryan, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, there is a huge need for event staff at spaces and at parties. I was like, people keep asking us. We keep saying we miss the restaurant. And I was like, we should just take this leap. And I was reading some book yesterday and it's called Choose Your Enemies Wisely by Patrick Brett David. It's a really good book, Sarah. You should read it. It's really good. It's scary, a little daunting, but it's good. And it was saying like the rate of success sometimes is measured by how fast you do things. How fast when you learn, you do things. So at that time, when I had decided we would start the mobile bar business, it was instant. Me and Ryan were like, okay, I told myself, I'm going to give myself a week and we're going to do this. Okay. And then after a week, we started doing it little by little. We would start bartending at events. We didn't have an LLC. We didn't have none of that. We had our insurance. That was one thing that we wanted to get immediately was insurance. We had our Bassett. So we had the minimal viable product there, which was ourselves and our certifications and whatever, and our clients that were already coming to us. So we started with that. Then that's when I was like, okay, clearly, like this can be full time. So we have to make this full time. So I was moving really fast. And I told Ryan, I'm like, we have to make this start now. So we got our LLC, did all of that. That took, a week. It doesn't take long for them to do it, legals and whatever. We got all of that done. I was like, we need to do a website. I was like, okay, that's how we're gonna funnel on all of our clients. And we're thinking and we're acting, right? And I knew that this was important to not just think, but to act because of my experience, some personal experiences I had with mental health problems that I was having. And then also because of my experience as a coach at this tech startup. I knew a lot about coaching and I knew a lot about like human psychology and how things work. And I just knew that rule of thumb. And one thing is to think and another thing is to act. So we got that website started up and running. It had, I've told you, Sarah, it had a ton of typos. That website, I don't know if I could pull it up again or if there's something that would allow me to pull it up, but it had a ton of typos. And I just started putting ourselves out there. I wasn't shy. I wasn't hesitant to do it. Immediately, I started marketing ourselves, and it wasn't perfect by no means, which a lot of people think that, oh, when you start, everything has to be perfect and everything. But my whole thing was, let's just do it. Let's give ourselves a timeline. This is when it has to be done. If it can be done before, that's great. And so
Yeah.
that's how everything started. And it moved really fast, I think, because we were very intentional.
Yeah, and I love that you've highlighted here that, like, the very active imperfect action is what got you started and is what created momentum, because you're right, and you participated in our group program the last quarter of last year, and you probably even saw some evidence of this wherein people really get all up in their own head about things, and instead of just
Mhm.
doing a thing, they have to talk about it, think about it, stall out, right? There's just instead of actually doing something imperfectly, they hold themselves back from doing it because they have all of these fears about not doing it perfectly. And you hopped in there a number of times and were like, I did this thing and it just worked. It wasn't perfect. There's lots of typos on it. And we're constantly improving things, but we just put it out there. And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like the whole idea of things have to be perfect. Now, this isn't to say that like certain things you should be careful about and you should really think about them. You should put more thought into it before you start doing the effort of finalizing everything. And there are my non negotiables where I'm like, I really have to like sit and think on this for a second. I'll act on it, but let me really sit and think about how this is going to impact us as a whole. But there's other things where it's, do I really need to take 5 weeks figuring this out? Because also I approach it from the standpoint of this is a lot of money that I'm wasting to be worrying about this for 5 weeks and I'm not doing nothing and nothing is getting done. And instead I could be making money and instead I could be giving jobs to our contractors. And instead we could be locking in these contracts. And so that's why I always say the website story, because we were able to lock in our biggest contract through that crappy website, through not even having our branding down for our Instagram, not even, which is still something we're figuring out as we go, but a lot of it was acting on momentum. And I think the thing that comes with like the growth mindset with this is, like I said, not having that everything has to be perfect and I have to move in perfection type of thing. If I had done that, Sarah, I'll tell you right now, probably we would have made 2% of everything that we made in the past year. So we would have lost out on a lot of money. But yeah, I think definitely putting that into action has been super, super helpful. And then also, I think when we had started our mobile bar business, I always tell people I was at a really low, dark point. Like I was at a low, like the darkest point of my life. And when I started it, I think it was also because I was like, you know what? I want to prove to myself that I can do something despite this crappy situation that I'm in, despite how I feel. So one part of me was feeling really crappy, really just shitty. I felt horrible, not doing well. And then the other part of me, the logical part was like, what can we do to stay out of those horrible thoughts, those horrible feelings, those intrusive thoughts that I'm having? And it was like, let's just act on what we're supposed to be doing. Let's go to the gym. Let's start this business. Let's do what we can, but let's not stay thinking. It was like a blessing in disguise. So those mental health problems that I was having, the depression, insomnia, a lot of intrusive thoughts, I trained myself through those mental health problems to act. Because I think when you're in a depressive state, a lot of people want to stay in bed. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to eat healthy. They isolate themselves from people. And that's where I was at. I was isolating myself. I was staying in bed. I didn't want to do anything. So I remember when I was going through that, I kept asking myself, like, why am I going through this? Like, why is this happening and stuff? I believe in God. God comes before anything in my life. And so I would always ask God, I'd be like, God, like, why is this happening? And I truly feel like I think I know the answer now. And it was just to get out of my own head. And that's what I see a lot of mobile bar owners and entrepreneurs do is they get in their own head. And I'm like, listen, you could be making really great money, but not only that, but you could be making a change with your ideas. You just
Yeah.
have to get out of your own head because if you do that, you will stay stuck for a very long time. And I know that because that's what I did.
So far, you've shared with us that the part of the growth mindset that really worked for you is doing the things, not just thinking about the things, but actually going and doing the things, even the uncomfortable things, to your point, where the last thing you wanted to do is go to the gym and actually network. You did a lot of networking in Q4 when you were in the group program, which admittedly is something a lot of people don't want to do, period. But especially people who struggle with mental health, being
Yeah.
around other people voluntarily, strangers nonetheless, right? Not exactly the
Yeah.
attractive thing on the mental health list, and yet you did that, and I think an important thing to highlight here is that oftentimes with a growth mindset, it means doing things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it is uncomfortable for me to network and people don't notice it because they're like, oh, it looks like you're doing so good. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't go into networking thinking that I'm going to do this perfect and I'm going to gain the right connections and this and yada, yada, that. I went into it with, I'm going to get no payback on this for, let's say, 2 years. Am I willing to not get any money back for 2 years? And once I knew my answer to that, it was like, okay, then we're going to go network. Let's start doing it now. And it was also part of being patient, I would say, is being patient. And that Q4, there was someone in the group who had mentioned that networking really helped for her. Right away, I was like, okay, I'm going to networking events. I signed up for two that week. I started going. I had done them before, but I really started being intentional about going to them. And then also, I'm a big supporter of I'm a small business owner, obviously. I'd be a big supporter of small business owners. So I go to the event and I see, okay, how can I help out the person? Can I refer a customer to them? Because I know the importance of putting back your money into communities. And so I'd start doing that, right? I'd refer someone to someone. And it was never with the intention of, oh, then you have to do that for me because I'm doing it. It was like, no, because I knew it was going to help us as a community as a whole here where I live at. And also because it just feels good to do that for a small business owner. So I started going into it with not just adding value to them, but helping them out with their business. And then the blessings started coming to me, right? Like people started helping me out. And I was like, oh, this is great just to help each other all out and elevate each other. So going into networking, that was my goal, which was let's see how I can add some type of value. If they would ask questions about like, oh, do you guys know of, I don't know, like contractors, plumbers, I'd be like, I have a really great guy for you. Or when people would tell me like things like business has been tough lately, I'd be like, wait, hold on. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? I'd give them solutions that they can do that have helped me in my business. And so that just started paying off doing all of the networking. And especially for mobile bar owners, it is so important to do it. I tell other mobile bar business owners too that networking isn't just at these professional events, these business events. It's when you're at a client's home. You like your brand is right there. You are your brand. The contractors who are working for you, the employees, that is your brand. That is a form of networking. The people are like, slugging behind the bar taking all these multiple shots, these bartenders with the client, that's your networking card right there, right? And so part of my networking strategy was to figure out what are the most effective things that I can do that will work for me for networking. And I learned a lot about sales. I took a book and I read it in the day and I learned about sales. I don't have any formal sales training. So I was just like, okay, let me read this book and let's get it done with. I read it and it said that people only buy from people that they like. And I kept seeing that in sales. We would go to events and I'd be like, okay, what's out of my hand is out of my hands. But as long as I'm being respectful, I'm being kind, I'm being respectful of any cultural stuff, anything having to do with religion, which I already was from the beginning. Am I being respectful to their guests? Am I having common courtesy? That's all that matters. Everything else, my personality is as is, and if they like it, I hope they do, but if they don't, it is what it is. But it was little things like that really made a difference, and I kept growing and growing and growing as a person, the more that I would start doing these things, and our mobile bar started growing because of that. These little actions that I would take every day, it really paid off.
That's a really great point to point out too, that we sometimes think about this is where I am and this is where I want to be. And like, what is the thing that I can do that's going to flip that switch? And oftentimes, I would say more frequently than not, it's the smaller daily activities that you incorporate and that you execute that just culminate and create change slowly over a period of time. But in there does come a point where it's the snowball effect, right? Where those small
Mhm.
little additions and the small little things that you're doing every day have a bigger and bigger impact on the business, to which We Mixed has certainly seen in its very young life. You guys
Yeah.
crushed the $100,000 sale mark within 12 months before you even turned 1, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think part of that too is which I tell people is be open to learning. A lot of people are not receptive to learning from people who have already had success. And just because someone has had success doesn't mean you should take all of their advice, of course, but you should listen a little bit more carefully to what they have to say. So when we started with you, Sarah, we had took one of your workshops that you had on visibility. This was back in May, I believe. And when I had seen that workshop go up, it was on my Instagram feed. And I told Ryan, I'm like, we're signing up for that right now. I don't care what the price is. Let's do it. It's going to help us in the long run. So I just acted very fast. Some other people are like, I don't know, would I really want to do that? Is it really going to help me? Is it like, I don't know. I mean, I was fast on it. And so that's where I say I knew that I would come to you and I would learn from you. And I was like, okay, Sarah has experience. The credibility is there. I have been following her for a while. I came across the post. Let's do this. But I went into it with, I'm going to be open to learning. I'm not going to go in and be like, I don't know if this will really work for me. I don't know. Like you have to give it a shot. You have to try it to see if it will work. Not only do you have to try it, you have to do it for some time. The first shot isn't going to work. If I went into networking and after the first networking session, a day later, less than 24 hours later, I'm like, this didn't work for me at all. Not only were you not receptive to learning, you weren't being patient to what's going to bloom after all of that effort. It's like giving up on the gym after like 2 weeks of going and you're like, I'm not losing any weight. That's like the analogy I always like to give. No, you're not going to, you might not lose any weight now because there is a physiological change that is going on within your muscles and everything else. But give it some time. Come back in like 12 weeks and let's reassess. And so you see, I was a health coach before, so I know all these things. So like the exercise things is like in my head. So that's why I say we learn from you. And I told Ryan, we have to practice patience here because this everything we are aiming for will happen, but we have to do it and we have to do it for a certain amount of time and networking and being visible on Instagram and giving great service and everything. Like that's all in the long term game. There's short term things that you can do now that will give you immediate results, I would say, but we're in it for the long run.
Yeah.
So that's where this growth mindset comes in is knowing that you're in it for the long run. And so being patient with it.
Yeah, it's a journey. You've also reflected another thing that I think is associated with growth mindset, that you definitely walk this walk, and that is utilizing the expertise and experience of other people. And you went to that workshop and you were super engaged in the workshop. And then you guys actually hired me to work with your packaging and pricing, which was a huge
Oh,
moment of
yeah.
realization for you guys that you were working really hard for very little. You like increased your prices that day, never had a problem booking. A lot of people feel if I raise my prices, then I won't be booking as much. You guys never had that experience, which very few people do when you raise prices, but that's the fear that they have. And then you joined the academy, and then you joined the accelerator, and part of a growth mindset is realizing you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Mhm.
and you read a lot, which I love and think is another big and easy, inexpensive way to access other
Yeah.
people's knowledge and information. So you're constantly in learning mode, but you're also then in implementation mode. It's not just learn, which is sometimes we see people are willing to absorb all the information, but then they get stuck on the implementation. You're not only willing and eager to learn from others, but then you take that information and you put it immediately into practice.
Yeah, that's why I say it was very fast to transition from let's go from a workshop, let's do the workshop. Okay, we gotta get the finances in order. Where are we losing out on money on the table? And then let's join the academy, let's further into it and let's do this because here's the thing is I'm gonna invest in something that I know is gonna bring me back for one, peace of mind. I was like, I have peace of mind by joining the academy because as soon as I join, I know all of my answers are there. The questions that I have right now, and they were, right? I'm gonna join this visibility workshop because I know I'm confused about what to do with marketing, even though I have some marketing background. How do you do it for a mobile bar? I don't know. So that's why I joined. And so it was very quick. And so I always tell people just act quick, do something, one step, but act very quick. Part of that was, I'd say, like just giving yourself timeline was very helpful. I would give myself a ton of timeline. I give myself a rule. This is a rule I came up with and I have it in my journal. And it's we're going to spend today 10 minutes doing something that is going to generate money for the business. What is the strategy? Visibility. Okay, 10 minutes. What can we do? Okay, we're going to spend 10 minutes learning about something that will really make an impact this week on the business. And then the other 10 minutes, we're going to organize something, declutter something that we don't need in the business. So it's 30 minutes. And in those 30 minutes, you can get a lot done. But I know within those 30 minutes, I've made the highest amount of impact because I did something that I know will generate money, cash for the business. Maybe not now, but sometime in the future. I did something else that we can get rid of for the business. Maybe it's wasting money. Maybe it's like decluttering the office. And then, I spent the other 10 minutes doing something that will help with the growth of the business, which is learning. And that's why I say you can really have the highest impact in the shortest amount of time. But people, what they usually do is they spend the longest amount of time thinking and just thinking and nothing gets done. And
Yes.
so that's why I say like it's important to invest into resources that you know are going to help you. So every lesson I took in your academy, Sarah, I told Ryan, okay, what are we going to do with this information? And what can we get done this week with this information? And so me and Ryan were quick at it. I told someone else's story too, Sarah. I told someone that when we did the pricing sheet with you and we figured out our pricing, it was close to July 4th. We had the highest day where we had two bookings. And in those two bookings, we had made the most amount of money after we had switched those prices. And it was reflective of the prices you told us to change them to.
And I remember thinking how important that was for your confidence. Because when you raise your prices that much, whatever I do pricing and packaging meetings with people, of the many I've ever done, there's only ever been one, I think, where they were either already priced exactly where we would have put them or higher. And that's because they were already in our programming and they already knew the four-part pricing model and they already had a good sense of everything. Everybody else is usually shocked and then nervous because they're like, I'm barely closing events with this pricing. I thought my pricing was the problem. And I'm like, but it is a problem. It was too low. And so immediately people will go into, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get this. And you, in the true Karina style, were like, let's try out the new pricing immediately on these two events that came in, the two leads that came in. They didn't bat an eye. You booked them, and then you had complete and utter confidence in your new pricing.
Yes, it gave me the confidence. I was like, "Wow." I was like, "See what happens when you do it right?" I was like, if we hadn't fixed our prices, Sarah, probably we would have made around like 50 to 80% less, I'd say. I have to remember back our pricing in early of 2023. But it's also very helpful. What I tell people with pricing is it's helpful because it is a luxury service. As we always say, it's a luxury service, a mobile bar service. And also, you can pay better, you can scale, you can provide better service. You can do this. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to do it because I don't want to seem greedy. It's a mindset thing. I don't want to seem greedy. I don't. No, you are literally giving your clients a better experience. You're able to give them, I don't know, fancier ice cube, better talksware that looks nicer for people to take pictures, better service. You can hire people who have more experience in the industry and pay them better and do this and that. So you're creating opportunity by pricing higher. Really, it's the value. It's the value. That's what's going to come with the price, the value that you can add. And so we did those two events and they were super, super happy. They were like, this is the best thing ever. And we were only really able to do that because we had changed our pricing. So we were able to give up a better quality of the product. And that makes me proud to say that we do events and people are really happy with the service. Like that makes me happier than, oh, you booked us and you signed a contract and you paid. It makes me happy to see that our clients are happy, that they're left feeling like, wow, like I booked the right service and I'm going to use them again and I'm going to become a loyal customer and I'm going to refer them. And so we get a lot of referrals because of that. I don't think that would have been possible if I hadn't been receptive to learning. And then also, another thing that I was going to say too is it's important to surround yourself with like minded individuals. And I would surround myself a lot with people who I knew were successful, who had some of the personality traits that I didn't have. I have a really close friend of mine, and she acts fast. If I tell her, can you send me an email? It's sent within 24 hours. If I were to ask her a question, she has the answer, you know? So you have to surround yourself with people who exude those traits that you want to have because then it rubs off on you. And so being part of the academy, a lot of the traits of other people that maybe I didn't have. So like the owners of the Drayson Mobile Bar, it rubbed off on me. We were together for that time, those 3 months during the coaching. It made an impact being surrounded by them and being also surrounded by other business owners who they have what I want and I know it'll rub off on me if I'm with them long enough.
One of the first pieces of information I got as a small business owner from a mentor was pay to be in the rooms where you're the least successful person there. And
Mhm.
I think that's counterintuitive, right? Because people want to be in rooms where they feel like they have clout, they have something to offer, where there are peers. And that little simple strategy has provided so much growth and value to me as a business owner, but also to my businesses. Because when you're in a room where you're the least successful person there, the conversation is different
Oh
because
yeah.
you have achieved the level of success that you have currently because of the rooms that you've been in, right? And the patterns that you've had and the things that you've heard. And so when you hear people talking about business at a totally different level, it unlocks new perspectives, new ideas, new possibilities. And so when you're in a room where people like April and Shayna from the Drayson, they hit $100,000 in revenue in like their first few months of business. They made it possible for people to see, oh my gosh, this is available to me too. And like when you're inspired by something, that means that that thing is available to you. So it's important to remain inspired as a business owner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I say you can be bitter or you can be better. You can be bitter that other people are doing good, or you can say, I'm going to do better because I want to reach what they're reaching, if not above. And when I meet people, I'm truly like inspired and I'm like, wow, it leaves me feeling some type of way. Even our clients, some of them, I'm so like inspired by them. We did a corporate event and it was inside of a restaurant. I met the owner of the restaurant. Sarah, he had just turned 21 the day before we came in to bartend. He has this restaurant. It's doing really well all over Chicago. It's been in the Chicago Tribune. It's always jam packed. 21 years old, has 13 employees, is looking to scale, is looking to grow, has a very diligent routine. And I met him and I was like, wow. I think about him and like, wow, this kid is like killing it. He's getting his degree at the same time. I'm like, wow. And it's if you really wanted it, you would. When this kid really wanted it, so he did it. So if you really want something, you're going to do it. And there are things that impact maybe your rates of acting on something. Like I said, maybe mental health, maybe finances, maybe all of that. But I said, nothing is going to stop us. If other people are doing it, if the Drayson is doing it, when I met them, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Then we can do it. There's literally like nothing stopping us. There's certain things that may stop us, but even then, no. So it's having that change in perspective. Maybe 3 years ago, I wouldn't be able to say all of these things. But by the time, like I said, we had started our mobile bar, I was like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm done of like making these promises and I'm not fulfilling on them. I'm done of saying I'm going to do it and I never do it. I'm done of people saying, weren't you going to do that? And I'm like, yeah, I never ended up doing it. It never got done. And so I was like, how can I change that? I want people to say, Karina gets things done. Karina has helped me. I'm like, it starts from within. Over time, those things they've affected the way I do other things. The way I run my mobile bar business has affected the way I do other things. The way I keep my promises to people, the way I interact with people. I think having a business, if you treat and you care for it properly, it's going to impact other areas of your life. So it's impacted me in other areas. My marriage with Brian, my relationship with my family and my friends. And so I think it's hard to get into the habit, but once you get into the habit, it can stick with you for life. You just have to maintain it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the focus on the fact that it was small, incremental things over time. You didn't just wake up one day like new Karina.
No.
There are small little habits that change, and because it can feel daunting to feel like, man, I've got to make so many changes in order to be a different person or to have different results than what I'm seeing today. And the message that I'm getting from you through the topic of growth mindset is just do something, even if it's small, that's in the direction that you want to go, and just do a little bit more every day. And it doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be monumental. It can be small little things that build up over time, and it creates a new mindset, to your point. And maybe a great place to start is, what do you want people to say about you? What do you want people to think when they come into contact with you? And in many cases, you are your business, especially when you get started. And so for you, you started working on your business and then you saw those results in your own personal life. Honestly, this is how I oftentimes see it, because it's easier to work on a business than it is to feel like you're working on yourself. And so if you're working on your business, you're technically working on yourself too, but it feels safer to work on your business because it's not so personal. And then it just trickles down into your own persona as well. If you're doing the work that's aligned to your goals on your business, it could change your life.
Yeah, it could. And I think to keep the habit going, because I'm not always motivated, I tell people, I'm like, listen, I don't want to do this half the time. I'd rather spend my time on Netflix, on TikTok. If we're being honest here, I'd rather be on TikTok. Okay. But I know this is what's going to make the biggest change. And I think going back to what's going to keep you going is your why. And you go over this in your coaching and everything, but like knowing what your why is and like feeling passionate about your why. Because some people, they have whys and it's like, I want to make good money and that's what I want. And I'm like, but does it ignite something in you? Do you feel like something warming up inside of you? Then no, then you have to dig a little bit deeper. And so for me, my why is, okay, I want to have a business where I can employ people that I love. Yes, money is good. Yes, money is good. I always tell people money is good, but it's, I can give jobs to someone who's in school. We are able to make money for ourselves through our business. I'm able to give jobs to my family. I'm able to serve my community. I'm able to take this money and put it into changes that I care about. Family is big for me. Like I'm able to use this money to like help my niece. I can pay for her college. Like all of those things, my needs, giving my family, giving people that I love, scaling to employees and a bigger mobile bar business, like all of that makes me happy because I know of the impact that I'm making. And if my only thing was I just want to have money, which is good, like I said, But if it doesn't fire me up, then I'm not going to stick to doing it. It has to fire you up. So you need to figure out what is going to fire you up. And you have to constantly remind yourself in those moments, this can fire me up. 2 weeks ago, I was not doing well. It was just like one of those moments where I was like, I'm not feeling good. I'm not there really. And I had to think about it. I had to be like, okay, my needs, my family, the causes that I care about. And then I got fired up again. I was like, okay, back to it. We're back in the game. That took me 2 hours of thinking. Let's get back to it. So sticking to your why and being authentic about what it is will help you. It will help you a lot because that's what's going to keep you going when you don't want to go.
Karina, we've touched on so many awesome concepts in today's podcast. I think you're a true inspiration for anybody
Thank
out
you.
there that is either wanting to start or run or grow their mobile bar, but also if they're just human. Yeah, all the things that you talked today about a growth mindset, whether you own a business or you don't, are going to be principles if practiced that will enrich your life and make it more livable. Yeah, because you're right, and you pointed out that not every day is a good day. And some days we have to remind ourselves what we're working for and why we're putting in this effort of trudging through the daily grind of life anyways. And it's not always pretty, but it's super rewarding when you start to see the progress add up.
It's super rewarding. And going back to like the just mobile bartending itself, it is the hospitality industry, right? It is hospitality. And so you really have to put your best foot forward and give it your best shot, really, because you're in the service industry. It's not a product based industry. You have to understand the industry that you're in. For some guests, it's like nurturing for us to be there. It alleviates a lot of pain points for our guests. It's hospitality. And so we're in the business of hospitality, and you have to continue growing on that. And I try to learn from chefs. I go to restaurants, I see how the servers are. I pay attention to how maybe the chefs present themselves at restaurants. I pay very close attention because all of this will make a big difference to your business. Everything I've invested in up until this point has helped me. All of the experiences, like I said, like being in that restaurant and not liking working at it, but now I miss it and everything. That all helped. Chefs screaming at me, being on me about this and that. I'm really thankful for them, Sarah. Like all of the bad experience I went through paid off. Even someone too, this helped our business a lot, by the way, which was getting reviews. I used to work at a physical therapy clinic while I was also in college working at the restaurant at the physical therapy clinic. And there was the lead physical therapist. We did not click. But I started noticing at the end of every physical therapy, whenever a client would wrap up their program, 'cause sometimes patients are in there for like 6 to 8 weeks and then they're discharged, she would always go up to them and she'd be like, can you please leave us a review on Google? How was your experience with us? Despite us not clicking, she was very good at getting reviews. She was very good at getting the reviews on the spot. She was a good clinician, like one of the best clinicians I've worked with. And to this day, people are like, how did you get people to leave you reviews? I'm like, I asked for it right away. We do a great job at the event that people will want to leave us reviews, just like how she did. Every opportunity is a moment to learn. And all of those crappy experiences, I learned from them. I'm not bitter over them. I'm better from them. You don't stay bitter over something negative that has happened over your life. You can be sad about it. You can be mad, but at some point you have to learn from it. And so everything we've done, me and Ryan, we've learned from it and it's been implemented into WeMix.
Oh my gosh, I don't think that we could end on anything more poignant than that message. Everything in your life is a learning opportunity. Thank you so much for your time today, Karina. We are going to drop all of your socials and contact information in the show notes in case anybody wants to reach out and get additional inspiration or just send you a thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. It has been a true pleasure, Karina. It always is.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Karina.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought.
You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram at mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.